Welcome to Discograffiti, the music podcast that delivers the objective truth about the entire discography of every single artist and band that ever existed.
I'm Joe Kennedy.
And I'm Dave Gebrow.
We have a super special guest today. Should we bring
I would even venture to say he's a super duper special guest.
Turbo super duper special.
Yes. We are honored to welcome fellow music obsessive Scott Kannberg, a.k.a. Spiral Stairs, architect of the seminal Pavement sound, not to mention solo star in his own right and figurehead of Preston School of Industry. Welcome to Discograffiti, Scott.
Thanks for having me.
We are very honored to have you, especially with this band.
Yes. My favorite.
So we kind of collaborated with Scott on this selection. We came up with today's topic, Roxy music. Art-damaged rockers turned
psychedelic avatars for a new age, turned new age
loungy,
avatars for the post-party come down.
Right, all that.
So, do you guys mind if I just throw my hat into the ring first?
Sure.
Okay, Scott, you cool with that, man?
I'm. It's all yours, man. It's all yours.
Okay, so here's why. All right, so I don't mind being a bit open about this. I never really knew about Roxy music until the first night I ever tried acid.
Whoa.
Okay, so I had the great good fortune to be with my good friend Jim.
Not his real name.
It is his real name, actually. Quote unquote, though. He was born with the quotes around his name. So that night, for the very first time, I have this very vivid recollection of listening to The Bogus Man while my friend was laying in bed and I saw these question marks dancing around the room. That next day, I woke up, went to the neighborhood record store, which is called All Wilk, and I bought the eponymous first one and For Your Pleasure.
Wow.
And it was just, what a great way to be introduced to that band.
That's awesome, man. That's awesome. I wish that would have happened to me the first time I took acid. Unfortunately, I was at a Grateful Dead concert.
Wait, what year was that?
1984.
How do you? What's your recollection of first hearing Roxy?
Well, the first memory I have of Roxy was probably hearing them on the radio when "Love Is the Drug" came out. I just remember that song because it was kind of different than what was on the classic rock radio. You know, I mean, maybe my recollection's wrong. Maybe I heard it a little later because it was always on classic rock radio. You know, it was always
yeah.
It was.
I think I was a little older. I'm a little younger, but I was around the same age that you. Because the first thing I remember being exposed to them was when they were on MTV. It's '82. So I'm born in '72.
Okay.
So I was about 10. And so, More Than This and Avalon were both kind of like early MTV videos. And I was obsessed with MTV at that time. It's like the only thing I cared about in the world. I was just the right age. I was like 10.
Sure.
First really getting into records. And it was kind of like only weird bands had videos that first year in like 82.
Yes.
It hadn't really gone mainstream. So it was this kind of weird, like underground feel to it.
I remember Relax,
that did not last.
The Politics of Dancing. Do you remember that song?
Yeah. Mexican radio.
Mexican radio all the time. Yeah.
But yeah, the underground nature of MTV did not last very long.
No, it didn't.
But it was great there for like a year or so. It was really that magical. I would just stay up all hours at night and watch that.
But
I don't think I really got into the earlier records or even until like much later, like in college or something. That I kind of went. I only knew them as the Avalon era.
Yeah, it was the same. I mean, yeah, I heard that song, but I also remember seeing the Country Life record cover in the record shop and going like, man, those girls are sexy. Like, what the hell's that all about?
Yeah, their album cover game is top notch.
It is.
So I didn't buy it because I was too scared to buy it. But that was my earliest recollection was in sometime in the 70s for sure.
Joe and I were just talking, before we connected here about Roxy and Roxy certainly specifically almost being mislabeled a glam band because it's not.
Yeah.
It's almost like calling My Bloody Valentine a shoegaze band.
Yeah,
that puts everyone else at a severe disadvantage.
Yeah.
It's glam in a way, but then what sort of became what most people think of as glam is not really like them at all.
Yeah, I think it was like, in reading books and stuff about the time, like now you kind of understand that glam was just kind of around for not that long, like it was like
right.
What was it, like Mark Bolan and Ziggy and
who I think is totally overrated. Mark Bolan is
I like those records. I disagree.
I like Jeepster. I like a few Cosmic Dancer.
Those are some of the
songs.
sonically most amazing sounding records ever made. They sound unreal. They sound so good.
It's just Boogie dressed up in silvery shoes.
But that's kind of what glam was, It was kind of like
not Roxy.
Not Roxy. No.
Yeah, Roxy's different.
Yeah.
They're not really glam to me.
But I think they
mislabeled.
I think they kind of they were smarter than that. I think Mark Bolan was just trying to change with the times and even Bowie a little bit too. But Bowie was way more intellectual than anybody
totally.
was. But
I mean, it was just another fucking costume change.
Yeah.
Well, anyway, should we go to the beginning and dive in?
Yeah.
Because,
okay.
All these things will come up as we go through the chronology here.
The first thing that I think that bears noteworthiness here is in the early part of 1970, Ferry actually auditioned as lead singer for King Crimson. So they were looking to replace Greg Lake, presumably around the Islands. No, not Islands. Lizard.
Yeah.
Lizard period. And Fripp decided that, that Ferry's voice was not necessarily suited for King Crimson, but he was like,
good call.
Kid, you got moxie. Apparently chomping on a cigar and handing out a business card.
Yeah.
And that's what really was the bridge that helped him get signed eventually.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. But it was first Ferry hooked up with Graham Simpson. Mm-hmm. That was the first guy in the band, the bass player. They'd been in a band together in college called the Gas Board. And Ferry put out an advertisement. Andy McKay answered the ad. Andy brought his audiophile friend, Brian Eno, along at one point, and he was just going to be a technical advisor and very fast became part of the band. Then they became Roxy. Then they found out that there was another band called Roxy.
So they became the Originals. They became the
right.
And they
changed the Silver Beatles.
Changed their name to the Regulars. And then another band across town. And they just became the Thamesmen.
Yeah, right.
Anyway,
so
amazing how real Spinal Tap really is.
So this is phase one, Batshit E-Noise, 1970 to 1973.
Cool, we're in a phase.
We're in a phase.
Nice.
Yep. So Scott.
Yep.
Have you heard that on the box set stuff and the re-release of the eponymous record? Have you heard those May 1971 demos?
Yeah. They're fucking awesome.
Super interesting.
Yeah, they're so weird. Like they are.
Yeah, the main difference to me is they don't have Paul Thompson yet. It's a different drummer.
Yep.
They have kind of a jazzy kind of drummer, kind of a real loosey-goosey kind of drummer.
Yeah.
So it's a pretty different take on all the material because Paul Thompson's so just such a slamming, tight, monster drummer. So it's interesting to hear him hear those same songs in a different context.
Yeah, it's like there's that part in that song 2HB. It's like there's this weird jazz.
It's
big
like
band
it's like
part. It's so weird.
Yeah.
It's like a dissonant breakdown,
Yeah.
and in the released version, I think to the eventual betterment of the song, but you still lose something. They completely chop that part out.
Yeah.
It goes on for minutes.
Yeah, I know, but it's
interesting. It's not just paths not taken, but it was really the reins hadn't been pulled back or. The ideas hadn't yet been given shape. They were just flailing around like crazy.
Yeah, but it's very. I don't know. I hate the word proggy, but it's kind of like you could kind of see how they're coming out of the '60s kind of
Yeah,
all
right.
this kind of like their
soft-
Do you
heads are
really
in a
hate?
fucking mess, like
Yeah.
trying to.
But do you really hate saying the word proggy? Do you not like
I
prog?
just some prog. I mean, Gary Young kind of screwed me up on prog.
That's exactly. Thank you for going there because I was gonna try to lead you to that topic.
I mean, it was all Yes and King Crimson and
Yeah, but
and
he didn't
nothing
listen
but.
to Gentle Giant and Caravan, though.
Oh, of course he did.
Maybe he
right?
did.
Of course.
Did he like the obscure prog?
Oh, he loved it all, man.
Oh, he did. Okay, all right. As long as it was.
I mean,
naughty.
it was mostly. Then he would get into the Frank Zappa, and then now it's just like, oh, come on, man.
Mm-hmm. But Roxy, on these demos, he already has the synth. He already has the VC3 kind of cooking.
Yeah.
And I love the intro thing to the song "Lady" because it has that, like,
my God, that's
forbidden,
awesome.
forbidden planet kind of like sci-fi thing to it. Like
Yeah, Ladytron's. It's always been one of my
very
my favorites.
very artsy fartsy early take on Ladytron.
Yeah.
I like that. I dig it.
Yeah,
And their take on Chance Meeting is really skeletal. I mean, the bones are there.
You can really hear how they're at really an art school kind of concern at this point.
Yeah.
I could be wrong, but this could be the actual first thing I ever heard. I mean, not the first thing I ever heard. When I went to the record shop and heard the weird music. I think it was this demo. I think it was a bootleg of this.
It's super rad. It's super cool intro. So should we move on to the next one?
Yeah, well, let's. Well, first we have to. I give it 4 stars.
You're right, okay.
I know it's 4 songs, but I would say it's not yet. It's not yet perfect, but extremely interesting.
Yeah.
And definitely, more listenable than just of historical interest.
Now
I'll give it 4 stars.
I've got a question for you guys. I was listening to those demos, but I would always get confused with the Peel sessions they did kind of after that,
Yeah, that's the next thing.
which is like
So the main difference with the Peel sessions is now they have Paul Thompson.
and Davey O List,
Right.
Which-
yeah, they got a couple of new guys in.
which he
by the time of 72.
he like his guitar playing is so amazing. Like
Yeah, he sounds really good. He was kind of doing the same thing that Manzanera eventually ended up doing.
That's what I read.
Manzanera kind of followed right in his. Manzanera like learned all the parts and stuff.
maybe that's
he
what
had
it was,
already
yeah.
had it learned.
Yeah. He was like.
That's why he
roadieing
was
for them.
hired.
Yeah.
Because he knew everything.
He already knew everything.
He knew everything already. Yeah.
There you go.
So what do you give the demos?
I'll give him 4 stars as well. They're pretty listenable. I gotta say for demos.
Yeah. What do you think, Scott?
Oh, I think they're amazing. I'd give them what's your what do you go
0 to
0 to
5.
0 to 5? I'd give them 5.
All right.
5?
Okay.
Nice.
So now we are onto the 72 Peel sessions. And as we mentioned, they had some personnel changes. They have Paul Thompson, which is a radically different sound for them. Now they're this kind of very muscular, punchy, very tight kind of band. And also David O. List joins. So they're kind of getting close to their final form on these Peel sessions here. And they're very inspired.
Is this the final? Are they locked in now, or is Manzanera not?
Manzanera did not play on this.
Okay,
He joined
okay.
shortly after this.
Okay.
So yeah, it's a classic Peel session. I mean, we're talking to one of the great Peel session, a member of one of the great Peel session bands ever.
Yeah,
He's our special guest today.
No shit.
No exaggeration.
Yeah.
But
Well,
yeah,
because you guys
also-
always brought stuff that hadn't been released on studio records to the table. That was bonus.
Yeah. It wasn't as fun as advertised. It was a pretty stressful
I can see that.
time doing those because you're like hungover after 10 shows in a row, and you're like,
Right, you got to go in a day or something. You're doing probably. Yeah.
Yeah.
And then Steve would always say like, "Oh, let's just make up whatever," and I was like, "All right."
That's all part of the magic.
Right, because you guys were at odds with the notion of career.
From day one, yes, exactly.
Wait, tell us what it was like being a member of the Generation X.
Exactly.
But I do think the 72 Roxy Peel sessions, and there's a bunch of them. I think they did it more than once. They did it over the next few years. But the 72 Peel sessions are a real classic, I think. One of my favorites.
Yep, me too.
I give that 4 as well. That's great stuff.
I gave that 5 stars. I like that one a lot.
Yeah, I'd give it 5 as well.
All right, so then we're moving forward to then Manzanera becomes part of the band, and we're in the spring of '72, and really the shaping and refinement of the magic. When I think of like the great album sides of all time, the first side of the Roxy Music's debut record is definitely up there. It's perfect.
Yeah.
There's other great stuff on the second side, but that first side, it's a dream.
Yeah. And it's weird. And it's weird too. It's just like if you were a kid in '72 listening to that for the first time, it probably scared you a little bit.
Yeah.
Yep.
They just make a great racket together. They just play great together on this. It's like it seems like the material's like really well fleshed out. It's like really arranged. There's a lot of color and everything. It's like Andy McKay's sax stuff is really interesting.
So, all right, so let's just go song for song on this one, because I think this deserves it. Let's talk about Remake Remodel being the mission statement.
Yep.
I mean, both lyrically and musically for a whole new way in music. It's basically a pastiche of all these different styles that they threw into the blender in this sort of postmodernist frap. And, this was, there's almost no better first song for a band to have.
Yeah, and also like, it's pretty badass to go like, all right, bass player, play your little solo. Guitarist, your solo. Oh, Eno, do your little solo. It's like everybody has that. It's like a a big band or something starting.
Yeah. It's interesting you mentioned postmodernism. It's sort of like this is kind of like without getting super like rock critic on this. This is kind of to me like the embodiment of what postmodern music is. It's that kind of like, it's not really like it's not like a repudiation of what came before or a continuation of it. It's like a synthesis of things that came before. It's kind of like there's kind of irony built into it. And it doesn't respect like boundaries in certain ways, like previous artistic boundaries. It's kind of pushing those kind of boundaries. There's like clash between high and low art kind of happening. There's a lot of actually things that are similar to what Pavement meant to me in the '90s. Like Pavement was kind of postmodern in some similar ways. Embracing contradictions. Those are kind of some of the like kind of pillars of postmodernism in music, and nobody really represents it to me better than Roxy. They kind of like really define that. It's something.
Plus,
it's something new.
Their level of self-belief. That the concert footage of them. It was a TV appearance.
Great Whistle Test.
Great. That's the one. And Ferry is staring down the camera, and he's winning. I mean, it's really striking footage. That's a band with insane amounts of self-belief.
Yeah. He was good at that. Yeah, I mean, he was a little older, so he probably already knew kind of like what would work.
Yeah, he's already a very polished performer.
Yeah.
You can see, especially in that Great Whistle Test performance. But yeah, everything on side one's incredible. So like Ladytron, it kind of has
Ladytron is stunning.
It sort of has a 50s sci-fi kind of callback. The Andy McKay's oboe kind of reminds me a little bit of like the synth and like Telstar or something.
It is so fucking
has
crazy.
That sound to me a little bit. Just such a killer arrangement. Just everything works. It just really plays. It's like high art.
Yeah.
If there, let's just pretend that that Virginia Plain is the single that it was supposed to be. So we won't mention it as part of side one. But of course, that was not initially supposed to be intended on this record. It came afterwards.
Yeah. Right.
If There Is Something is a great song. 2HB especially for me, that really gets me every time I hear it, especially that sax breakdown, which used to be very dissonant in its demo version, and then became somehow very extraordinarily emotionally affecting in its released version.
Oh, it's beautiful. It's beautiful.
I also love his Ferry is kind of really good keyboard player too. A lot of his little keyboard licks are kind of essential to the songs. I love he's playing the pianette on 2HB, and it's kind of like treated so it's kind of has this underwater kind of sound to it. He's also a pretty cool musician in addition to being like frontman guy.
Oh, totally. He's the package, man. He's it.
It's another pretty big weapon. I mean, these guys are all amazing players. That's just another weapon to have. This kind of like really rhythmic, insistent kind of. A lot of his stuff is kind of that like down, 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 down. Those kind of really insistent keyboard licks, and it's kind of a big part of the sound.
Yeah, very confrontational.
So, side 2, I like side 2 kind of just as much. Really, it gets kind of rabbit holey, but it really is kind of a contrast to side 1. It's kind of like they're kind of laying down the gauntlet. Like we'll do anything. Yeah. We can take this out to places that are weird. I dig side 2 kind of just as much. Really.
How about you, Scott?
Yeah, I don't know. I mean, it all kind of just, it's the perfect record. It's not. I'm not really. I can't really judge side 1 or side 2, which is better. I think it all just goes perfect together, and the songs are just so epic. I mean, there's only one.
Yeah, like Chance Meeting. That one has like a real like kind of melodrama to it.
That is weird. Yeah.
Such cool shit on that. Well, that's
very dramatic.
Is hands down 5 stars.
Yeah, 5 stars. Easy.
Definitely.
I mean, every song really kind of be on the playlist, probably almost everything.
Yeah. I mean, the only ones I wouldn't put on the playlist would be The Bob and Sea Breezes. Mm-hmm. But we could put them all on.
I think you got to have the Bob.
You got to have the Bob, then the Bob goes on.
All right, so what's next? You want to take?
So 2 months henceforth from their debut record being released, they release a single because that album is not enough. Virginia Plain backed with The Numberer. Virginia Plain being it's one of the all-time greatest songs.
One butt-kicking song.
Yep. It's a completely perfect piece of music. And the stop-start sections with Eno's crazy synth squiggles is clearly not just a great section, but clearly a way forward for music.
Yep. No, it's an insanely good song.
Iconic, I would say.
Yeah, and they know it too. Me and You, Just We Two got to search for something new. They know it.
Yep. Yeah.
Again, the B-side's pretty cool. The Number is kind of one of those kind of, it's a kind of an oldies kind of take on oldies, like 50s kind of vibes.
Yeah.
Kind of repurposing those into something really new. It's a pretty cool B-side.
Yeah, there's some weird shit in there. It's what sounds like a synthesized penny whistle solo.
You can see why it was a B-side. It's like maybe a slight cut below what was on the record, but as a B-side, pretty cool.
Yeah. But it's the start of their B-sides, like for me the B-sides are they're not the best B-sides of a band.
No, they are clearly B-sides. Yeah.
Like it's weird that they have such great album tracks, but then they don't even just have one great B-side.
Yeah.
No, wait. I actually I would like to disagree with you on that one.
We'll get to that, though.
All right.
There's one. There's only one.
It's in there. Don't worry.
Okay. Yeah. I'm mentally bookmarking. Okay. But before we actually stick this with a rating and move and sully forth, there is an artistry that's involved with an amazing lyric being uttered before an incredible solo. So Me and You, Just We Two got to search for something new is up there, okay? I'd like to throw some others in the ring, okay? And then My Mind Split Open before Little Johnny Jewel, the second guitar solo.
Oh.
I
Heard Her Call My Name, and then My Mind Split Open.
I know one that I don't like at all. The intro to a guitar solo, which is Edge Play the Blues. That can fuck straight off.
Yeah.
That can fuck all the way off. Okay.
Guilty pleasure.
Yeah.
They were good up to in the early 90s. You don't think so?
Yeah, sure.
Oh, yeah.
Just that Edge Play the Blues.
Oh,
is
just
terrible.
that moment? Yeah.
I don't mind them in general.
Yeah.
But that I hate.
Yeah. You don't think they were cool with that line down south? All right, so I give that 5 stars for sure.
We're talking about the totality of the single. Oh yeah, that's 5 stars.
Yeah, 5 stars. Yeah. All right, so then the rest of 72.
I'm assuming, Scott, you're 5-starring Virginia Plain.
Yes.
I don't want to speak for you, but it's kind of self-evident.
I'm sorry, it was so implied. I just steamrolled. I'm sorry. All right, so then the rest of 72 goes by without recorded incident. March 73, they release Pajama Motherfucking Rama, backed with The Pride and the Pain.
Yep.
An astounding single. Scott, take it away.
Oh, it's one of my favorite Roxy songs of all time. And again, like, you know, it's one of those songs that when I've gone back in time, I always forget about because it's not on any record. And when I hear it, I'm like, "Holy shit! I forgot about that one and how great it is." And
I don't think I ever really appreciated it until for this, going back and listening to it for this podcast this time. It has a real high like fun factor to it.
I've always loved it, and what I love most about it is the way that it just sort of buoyantly floats there. The way and I was really listening close to it to see what was creating that effect, and I think it's just that that Morse code pattern synth thing that threads its way through the song, and then
the sax is great on this. It's super like alien sax on this one.
Totally.
Yeah, totally alien.
Yeah.
This is kind of like one of those tunes of theirs too. They were really like this, I feel like, most in the Eno period, where just every sound is very curated. Like they can kind of like throw a kind of kitchen sink of sounds at you, but then they're all like kind of amazing sounds.
Totally.
Like every sound is kind of like mangled in some way or like treated in a way.
I never realized that when I first heard Roxy in the old days, but like when I started listening to Devo and I listened to like Mission of Burma or someone like that, like they kind of have those moments of where they put that little bit of sound, you know, that they warp in some way to fit a song, and Roxy does that, like you said. Like it's curated.
No, but Mission of Burma has that guy.
Totally.
They have an Eno.
They do.
What's his name again? I can't remember his name.
He was the guy who would mix them, and then he would just mix.
He did like live. He fucked with you live.
Kind of like they would feed the mix into like a tape machine or something, and he would kind of mangle it that way.
I think that's what he did. Yeah,
and then it's on the records too.
Yeah,
so, it's a similar kind of thing where it's just that it's got its surface level, but then they just add so much color.
Perubu would do it too.
Yeah, yeah. There's just kind of so much information in the frame, like in a way that's also not overdone too.
I asked David Thomas once if he liked Brian Ferry and Roxy Music, and he was just like, "Yeah, they were a good college band."
What the fuck, dude? I gotta say, easily my favorite stage name of all time is Crocus Behemoth. There is no cooler stage name. I'm sorry, no offense, Spiral.
Exactly.
So Pajama Rama single, 5 stars.
Yeah,
5 stars.
5 stars for sure.
They're racking up a lot of 5s right now.
Wow.
So that same month is For Your Pleasure.
Yeah.
So they spent a lot more time in the studio. You can hear it. There's more elaborate production. The songwriting by Ferry goes into some seriously dark places that he kind of knew was kind of the last time he'd be looking around that particular room, so to speak. And actually, I believe, intentionally says goodbye to that part of his psyche at the end of the title track. But, you know, we got to go through song by song on this one. This was, you know, let's just say that Eno is extremely present on this record.
Yeah. Yeah.
So,
Eno gives a lot of texture to this record. He's filling in a lot of the empty spots. It's a little bit different approach on this record for him. I feel like he's kind of like taking on a more textural kind of role. A lot going on in there. He's kind of like filling in a lot of the cracks.
Yep.
But yeah, he's very, very prominent on this. You can really hear his influence a lot. They just had a lot of great material for this record. This is kind of more, this is more just straight, like everything's kind of song. It doesn't really have the rabbit hole thing on side 2 that the debut record has. But they had just so much strong material. Really, every song is kind of a banger.
Wow, they got they've got the jams, you know, the kind of the Every Dream of Heartache and Bogus Man jams, you know, that are just they do that on a few other records too, like later on, but like these where they just kind of suck you in, and you know, it's just like this really great kind of Velvet Underground kind of thing. But and like I said, my favorite line before a solo in Every Dream of Heartache, every dream, home, and heartache. You know,
I blew up your body, but you blew my
my
mind.
mind.
Yeah.
And
That is great.
that
is
every.
great.
I used to always have this competition with my buddy here in San Francisco, like best solo, you know, and he would always say, "Oh, some King Crimson solo, or whatever," and I would always say, "This is my favorite," and I finally got to see Roxy Music. I never got to see them, you know, in the 80s or whatever. I finally got to see them in 2010 when they did that, or maybe it was 2011 in Australia.
Right.
And they played the song, and I was like, you know, standing up, and I was just like, yeah, okay. When that line comes, I'm gonna fucking scream it out, right? so it's like blah body. She blew my mind. So I stand up and I yell at that line, and then I look around me and like the whole crowd's still sitting. My father-in-law is looking at me like I'm like, what the fuck? I think Manzanera even probably heard me because I think he kind of pointed out there and looked at it.
That's great.
That's funny.
They still had the core. It was still the four guys.
Yeah,
right. In 2010.
Yeah.
Right? Yeah.
Yeah, it was great.
Well, knowing that, I'll never feel terrible about heckling you in the future.
Dave is a serial. He's a serial heckler.
I really am.
Okay.
I believe that heckling, if you're not an asshole, is just a way to communicate.
Oh yeah.
If you have something intelligent to say, and not just free bird.
Yeah. I love it.
But you heckled Lou Barlow, right?
I heckle everyone.
I love it.
Archer's a loaf.
Harry Nilsson. Arthur Lee.
Arthur Lee was a particularly memorable one.
Anyway, back to For Your Pleasure.
Okay, so that's a great story, by the way. The one that hits me the hardest, where it's interesting because this is a band that's very much about artifice, but they have some profoundly emotional experiences that I've had listening to their records. No more so for me than Beauty Queen.
Mm-hmm.
I love Beauty
Epic.
Queen.
Awesome.
That initial keyboard flare always sounded like a roaring fire to me. And then
And the jam in the middle, it's kind of like they go into like krautrock kind of land for it. Like they become like Neu or something for a minute.
Yeah, with that regal fuzz slide.
Yeah, that kind of just feels like anything can kind of happen on that right song.
Yeah, I'm interested in like, because I've read a couple Roxy books and they never really go into like kind of the recording of these records. Like they never go into like like Ferry came in with these like skeleton versions of songs, or he had the full songs. It's like I'd kind of be interested in finding out where, how they were.
You know what? When I was doing the research for this show, I came across a website that's done by like Roxy super fans, like kind of an aggregator.
Yeah.
And there is some stuff like that on there. We'll put a link to that. I don't know off the top of my head, but we'll put a link to it in our show notes, and I'll email that to you, Scott. It's cool to read.
Production wise, the thing that jumps out at me, where it's like, okay, these guys have a clear idea of what they're doing here because it's such a bold choice, is the way the instruments hang in midair on For Your Pleasure, and how dryly his voice is recorded when he sings, "Old man, through every step." That is just weird. I mean, like you really feel like you're ensconced in total strangeness when you're listening to that.
Yeah.
I mean, it has a lot of those curated kind of sounds that we keep talking about. Like the piano is through some kind of warble making device. Like it has that kind of underwater thing again. There's the beautiful like a reverby guitar, and lots of things have these like long reverb tails. It's kind of like a whole little. That's one of their kind of like most weird and wonderful little sound worlds they made on the title track.
Yeah, it's almost like Brian Ferry was just trying. It was like the only records in his collection were from like the 30s and 40s. Like he was like channeling these like these kind of crooners and big band guys and.
But it's fed through like a late night monster movie sausage.
Yeah, it's like that postmodern thing.
Yeah,
postmodernism thing,
maybe.
you know?
Yeah. Yeah.
I love The Bogus Man. That one kind
Love
of,
that, yeah.
you know, that one apparently, I never really knew this, but on that same website I was just talking about, the Roxy fan site, that one's kind of contentious among their fans. Some kind of love it, some hate it.
Yeah.
But I love that tune.
I
To me,
love it.
it has a real discipline to it, even though it's kind of a long form, really just a jam.
Yeah.
It kind of never loses my attention, even at its length. You know?
And
I always incorrectly remember it as an instrumental because his voice is such a, you know, sort of wallpapery effect kind of a thing that I never even think of it as a song.
Yeah.
the I think around that time they did some TV performances like Music Laden or whatever too, where they play it, and it's just incredible.
Yeah, it's so good. They sound just like the record.
Yeah.
They really had that. They were kind of had that thing that like really great bands have, where you just need those particular people to make that sound. You know, it's their chemistry together, the way they played.
Yep.
You know, the guitar and drums and Ferry's keyboard stuff. They play. You know, sometimes that just happens with their combination of people. They go in a room, they start playing, it just sounds good. You can't really explain why.
And it's interesting because, you know, they are hitting on something that is once in a lifetime. But, you know, guys like this at a time like this in their career, they're moving fast. Things are changing fast. Their sound is changing. They're just like, you know, doing all they can just to keep up. And then all we get for it is basically like approximately 12 months worth of material.
Yeah,
Totally.
of incredible. Yeah, kind of all packed in there.
Totally.
This is, to me, as far out a point in the possibilities of pop music that, I mean, it's not even been matched since, I don't think. I give this 5 stars for sure.
5 stars for me too. I mean, this also has, you know, it shows kind of everything they can do. There's a couple of great rockers. There's like the great kind of long form thing. There's the really pretty. There's the, you know, kind of ghostly ending. The really beautiful ending. Yeah, super. You know, this is an easy 5 stars. This is, you know, an absolute classic. And you know, it kind of, I think like the song "Editions of You."
Yeah.
It's another one I really like a lot. That's
Great
almost
song.
like kind of like a
Pre-punk.
If you've never heard Roxy music,
Yeah.
just put that on. If you like that, continue. If not, you know, that's pretty representative of like their strengths to me.
Yeah, I agree.
What do you think, Scott? What do you rate for your pleasure?
It's definitely 5. It's up there,
Yeah.
up there with me.
Phase 2, Art Damage Snakeskin Shedding, 1973 to 1979. So we kicked this off, although not technically to be rated or given a rating. We just want to look at Brian Ferry's first solo album, These Foolish Things, released in October 73. The reason why we just want to mention that is because he has mentioned it was, more than anything else, profoundly affecting on his writing style, which is in keeping with Brian Ferry's aesthetic because it's 13 cover songs. So all about the surface. But definitely a departure from Roxy's sound.
It's kind of like the production on that record is a little bit like kind of Roxy light.
Yeah.
It's in the same universe. It's kind of more about his vocal. It's very kind of more straightforward. I kind of like the Sympathy for the Devil cover in that. It's kind of not bad.
Yeah.
For me, it's all about Hard Rain's Gonna Fall and River of Salt, the first two.
Yeah, I mean, he does a good job at those things, but then like, I don't know. I mean, to me, I would have never done that if I was him at that age, you know, and had Roxy
I also
going.
don't really, it didn't seem to me like his songwriting changed very much, at least not right away. Seems like it was a little later he had a shift in the songwriting. I feel like the next few records
I almost always think of it as like he's trying to get out of his contract or something. I don't know.
Right, there's always stuff like that.
Yeah, but for him, though, for you and I, or for whomever, this would certainly be, you know, let's just do a fucking album dump here.
Yeah.
But for him, because, you know, he's looking at Surface, this was a paradigm shift.
Yeah, I think it was kind of important to him.
Yeah. The next month after his solo record, we have Stranded.
So I had never really gone through these kind of, you know, I kind of knew some of the kind of more famous songs in these, but I don't think I really got too deep into either Stranded or Country Life. Siren, yes. Siren I've always been a fan of. But so a lot of these were kind of new to me, some of the deeper cuts on these. I think this record holds up pretty good. So Eno has left the band at this point. But they replace him with Eddie Jobson, who is no slouch in his own right. He's a pretty interesting musician in his own right, you know. So it doesn't seem like a huge left turn, even with someone as, you know, monumentally influential as Eno leaving. It seems like they can kind of still pretty much carry on.
There's some extremely strong material on this record. I mean, the high points of Stranded are pretty staggering. A couple in particular, Street Life, then the final two, Mother of Pearl and Sunset. Mother of Pearl especially. You know, it's definitely one of my favorite Roxy Music tracks, and it's one of those songs like, you know, you only need to write one of those to sort of get this idea across. He does it so perfectly. Yeah. That whole like post-party self reevaluation come down vibe thing. Yeah. He really nails it.
Yeah, the intro and the weird intro to Mother of Pearl, like
that's great.
That is. And then all of a sudden you're into the jam of Mother of Pearl, you know, like it's like weird.
Yeah, Mother of Pearl is a super interesting song. It kind of has like a kind of sleazy kind of feel to it.
Yeah.
You know, it's kind of creepy at the beginning. Yeah. It's kind of not the most like. I think this is kind of more of a. It's a centerpiece song on the album, and I think it's kind of for the more like adventurous listener kind of.
Yeah,
it's this one more.
You think so?
I think it's really kind of like a high art kind of song.
Yeah,
but then there's like a song for Europe, which is like it's like a kind of a typical Roxy later song, you know, like later.
Right.
I love that. My favorite thing about that is let's have a Latin spoken section and then another French spoken section.
There's some, you know, that song Psalm is just that's a weird song.
Yeah,
they're just
Psalm is
I don't
amazing.
understand. It's kind of like they went from the first two records to this one is kind of like you could see them branching out a lot to all these kind of different styles and
right. Yeah, Psalm is kind of a different thing.
It's kind of like a psychedelic gospel,
like a slow burn kind of thing.
Yeah,
I've always loved Psalm. You know, I think for me, there's just Serenade. I never clicked with a song, and now we're splitting hairs. Now we're just talking about one of the great bands.
Yeah.
Serenade never really clicked with it. Song for Europe never really made as profound an effect on me. But overall, this is to me almost as good as the Eno stuff. Yeah, I would give it 4.5.
Mm-hmm. I gave this 4. But I could go 4.5. Like it's like I think that you're kind of right. It's kind of they're still bringing a lot of good material to the table, and they're still the recordings are still very interesting and curated. You know, there's a couple kind of bangers that kind of hold up against like Virginia. It's like Street Life. That song kind of like holds its own against Remake Remodel Virginia Plain. Yeah. It's kind of another one in that category. Yeah.
And it's as good.
And then it closes out really strong with the last two with Mother of Pearl and Sunset. So yeah, there's a lot of good material on there.
I always forget
pretty damn good.
I always forget about Sunset. It's like when I hear that, I'm like, oh yeah, that's like it's such an understated Roxy song. You know,
yeah,
to me,
it's kind of like a goodbye of sorts.
Yeah.
You know,
yeah.
Like,
it feels like it's a goodbye to that first era.
Perfect ending to the record.
Yeah. To me, it's just like there's all those little moments on this record where you could see like Japan, you know, ripping off, or Adamant, or even Bowie in some ways, you know, kind of.
Yeah, it feels like it took a little bit of time for the influence to kind of kick in, but it's like probably by the late 70s, people had kind of like were you know, repurposing the sound or kind of going for the sounds, like how it was a very influential record.
But some of their ideas they're kind of repeating a couple things, maybe a little bit, but I think, but they're still interesting. Like I think it's.
What are you going to go ahead and give it?
I'm going to give it a 5.
5?
Yeah.
Okay. Well, right at that same time when Street Life was released as a single, they went ahead and stuck a song on the B-side that is really the apotheosis of what Scott was just talking about previously, about how all their B-sides truly belong on the B-side. Hula Kula. Cute little throwaway instrumental, but completely tossed off. I'll give that one 2.5 stars.
Yeah.
I gave it 2.
All right.
It's cool. It's fine. It's like a kind of lap steel workout.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
It's it's not really essential.
2. I'll give it a 2. Yeah.
2? Yeah. All right. So a year from that point, October 1974, you have the B-side of Thrill of It All, Your Applications Failed. It sounds like a B-side where not only does it belong on the B-side, but it sounds like that it was meant for a vocal. They just forgot to put one on it.
Yeah.
This one's totally for obsessives. And I guess I'm not one because I give it 2 stars.
I give it the same 2. My only note is not essential.
All right. So November 74, Country Life. All right. So this is actually, oddly, the first record to crack the top 40 in the U.S. It was number 37.
Fabulous cover.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
They still have the mojo. They still got the core lineup. So they got they have the core 4 guys that you really need to make the sound. And Eddie Jobson's still hanging around. So they're still Roxy musicking. They're still doing the thing.
Yeah.
They're This is pretty much, this to me is pretty similar to the previous record in terms of like quality and approach.
What are you thinking, Scott? What's your connection with this?
I love this record. It's like I said, I saw the cover of it when I was a kid and was really interested by it, of course. But I never bought the record. But when I went back to went back into the Roxy wormholes. This is probably the second record I was into the most. The Thrill of It All is just such a great intro. Kind of like Street Life.
It really is.
Kind of like Street Life.
They're good at that kind of thing.
They're good at the intros, right?
Yeah,
they're good. They always have the banger rocker that starts off the record.
And it's got like the vibe of a galloping horse.
Yeah. And if you hear like the live version of that song, it's just so killer. And the other songs are kind of, Ferry's kind of songwriting, like the songwriting's a little more classic, like Beatles, like 3 and 9,
a little more traditional.
Yeah, and it's and then that weird part like with Bittersweet and Triptych, those are kind of some.
Mm-hmm. Yeah,
I love Triptych.
Triptych is very unexpected.
Triptych is
it's
crazy.
Very unexpected when
I
it kicks
know,
in.
right?
That one is very LSD like. The one that always stood out to me was just, in fact, one of those songs where there was a period of time where I was just so happy that the song even existed. That's how much it had an effect on me. It was Prairie Rose.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. That's another one that's kind of unexpected sounding. I think on those 2 songs, Triptych, especially in Prairie Rose, those feel like kind of new territory. Like Triptych has kind of a neoclassical sort of thing to it. It has kind of a Baroque kind of sound. Yeah. That was kind of a thing they hadn't really done before, and it's kind of nice and surprising. Also has the great curated sound, and then Prairie Rose also kind of has, like, I'd never heard Prairie Rose. I don't think I ever made it that far into Country Life, but yeah, it's a great song.
Yeah,
really great chemistry in the playing.
Well, then you can, Talking Heads ripped off Big Country from that song, I think, right?
Oh that pedal steel part.
Yeah,
that totally makes sense.
I really, Casanova. What a kind of weird song as well. Like, kind of.
I never liked that one. I never connected with that one.
I mean, Out of the Blue, that's another one that's kind of a staple. Yeah. That's kind of always
Eddie
in there.
Jobson. Eddie Jobson showcase for sure.
Another really cool song. I mean, I also gave this 4. It's 4 is kind of like my rating for like an album that's just very solid, but maybe not like utterly classic. That's still albums that I give 4s, I still really like them. I just kind of want to save a level for the ones that are like super transcendent.
I'm right there with you. I mean, I give it 4. Mm-hmm. It's not, to me, this is not on the same level as that early stuff with Eno, but if you don't allow that to shadow it, it's certainly a great record.
This record has good high points. The high points are really high.
I forgot about A Really Good Time. That song's got some really great melodies in it, and it's a good story, as well. Like,
this period of the band's pretty solid.
I give it a 5.
All right, so moving along, September 1975. Love is the Drug comes out as a single. We just want to talk about the B-side right now. Sultanesque.
One of their better B-sides, I think.
Yeah. So this is a sort of a krautrock one-off that remains an avenue not taken. It's a really good instrumental written by Ferry with this sort of wiggling worm-like synth line that wends its way through until a buzzing swarm of guitar overdubs swoops in and overtakes it for the win.
Yeah, I think it's pretty cool. I mean, it's if you put up against Bowie at the time, it's kind of before he goes off into Berlin land, and
Yeah.
Scott, you ever have a deck of like oblique strategies cards? Have you ever like flipped through those?
No, but I follow the Twitter account, so it's like I see it every day.
There's a card that says, one of the cards that says, imagine the music as a moving caterpillar. That's one of the oblique. That song kind of reminds me. This song reminds me of that oblique strategies card.
Yeah.
4 stars for me for Sultanesque. I quite like.
I give it 5 actually.
Okay. I don't know.
It's
still a.
You think 4 and a quarter?
I admit it's a little weird to try to rate a song with the star rating.
For me, B-sides are a very important part of a band's.
Yeah.
What a band should do, like they should surprise people. They should give someone something really good on a B-side and not 40 seconds of a keyboard solo. I don't know.
So you give it a 0.
2.
2. Okay. Well, you guys, I see right now. The reason I'm being quiet is I'm frantically scanning through your back pages, trying to think of some hastily released 45, and I can't think of anything. All right. So October 1975, Siren.
Yay!
I want to say I'm going to hand it to you guys to run with this football, but I want to say that this particular trawl through their discography, it was the most different way that I've ever heard Siren. This was the best experience I've ever had with Siren. Cool. It felt like a culmination and a refocusing and sharpening of the ideas that were presented on Stranded and Country Life, whereas previously I never connected with it as much. Scott, what's your feeling about Siren?
Yeah, I mean, I never really listened to it until about maybe 4 years ago. I think I was in Mexico, just walking down the street and turned on. I was like, you know what? I'm going to listen to the Roxy records again. And then I was like, you know what? I haven't heard these records in years. I'm just gonna listen to them all one day. And I got to Siren, and I'm like, holy shit. The songs on I mean, of course, Love is a Drug. I remember that. But all the other ones, I don't think I've ever heard ever before. And hearing it for the first time, all of them were just like the perfect pop songs.
Yeah, I bought Siren on tour on vinyl, like before vinyl was really expensive, where you could walk into like Reckless Records and walk out with like a bag of 20 records for like $100. And so I got that record, I think I got it in Chicago, and I didn't really know it very well. And, it was in kind of a big bag of records I had that I didn't listen to till the end of tour. And I got home and put it on. I was like, wait a minute, I kind of always overlooked it. Like, this record's classic. This record's incredible. And that was maybe 10 years ago. So this has kind of always been one of my favorites.
It's my number one record of the Roxy catalog.
It's probably the most airtight record that they made in terms of like the really high quality control. They maybe don't hit the like super high highs, but there's a real like kind of, I don't know, it's very disciplined and focused, this record.
Well, I want to ask a question of Scott. So you're saying that this is your favorite band, but you've only really heard Siren about 4 months ago, and this is your favorite?
Yeah, about 4 years ago.
4 years ago? Okay.
I think this one gets overlooked a lot.
I think it does too. I mean, it was, they basically quit right after it, and then
it's maybe the most song-oriented record they did. I think it relies on the songwriting more than any of the production design or arrangement. It's just the songs are all like really well written. They're a lot of catchy kind of hooks.
Yeah.
The thing that jumps out to me about it, listening to everything back to back, is that the songwriting ideas, like the either the vibe and or the feel of it is just refined and just so much sharper. It's in the production, but also the writing and the production are dovetailing here in a way that I really hadn't noticed before. I mean, there's almost every song is just a killer here. It's a great record. I never really knew it before. I always thought it was the weakest of the first 5.
Yeah, no, definitely not.
But I definitely give this 5 stars.
But, you know, Love is the Drug is probably their biggest song, you know, besides maybe Avalon or More Than This, I guess. But Love is the Drug to me is the ultimate Roxy song. Yeah.
Love is the Drug to me sounds like the song like Duran Duran built their shtick around.
Yeah.
When you think of like Girls on Film or something, it's kind of like a similar kind of like that guitar stab kind of thing that's in Love is the Drug. Anyway, if I haven't 5-starred Siren yet.
Yeah, I'm 5-starring this.
5-starring.
I'm slapping this with a 5.
Almost too many good songs to talk about.
Yeah, I mean they're all great. So the next year the band basically for all intents and purposes had broken up. In July 76, they released a live record called Viva. We don't normally talk about live records. However, this one is worth mentioning mainly because of the song choice, and I kind of have I have a theory about it. So these are performances that are compiled from between 73 to 75. And the song choices are really out there. I mean, including a really long version of Bogus Man, Pajama Rama, Chance Meeting. These are strange choices. And when the band got back together and, started creating new music, it was in a completely different direction. So I kind of feel like this live album, its usage in their discography is just to kind of shut the door for good on all the weirdness.
The live record, the Viva Roxy Music live record, to me, it's I agree with you about the song selection. It's a pretty cool selection of songs, but it does have the good flow of like a good live show. It kind of comes out with a rocker. Then it's like Pajama-rama, which is really fun. Then it has the big epic jam, Bogus Man. Then there's kind of a mellow out section. Then another rocker. It's like it kind of flows like a show. And it's a cool live album because it shows a lot of different things they can do. It's not necessarily just packed with all the quote unquote hits. I think it holds up on its own really well. I had never heard it at all, but it's super cool.
If I was a fan back then, I would be really happy that they released that. I mean,
yeah. Live albums usually aren't really my thing, but this one is quite good.
This one bears mentioning. I give it 4 stars, even though we're not supposed to. Kind of an iconoclast in that sense.
I didn't rate it, so I'm just doing it on the fly. I'm going to give it 4.5.
Nice.
I'll give it a 5 since it was the second one I bought.
You're making us sound like assholes.
Hey, I give it 4.5. That's pretty good.
I mean, I did name my daughter after this band, so guys, come on.
All right. Oh, cool.
Cool. Well, is her name Roxy?
Yep.
Oh, that is awesome.
ROXY. Yeah, the nurse said when she was at the hospital, when she was born, the nurse said, What's her name? Roxy. That sounds like a stripper's name.
It doesn't matter what you name your child. The nurse should never say
exactly.
that.
Yeah,
Exactly. All right, where are we up to now? We're up to...
All right, so we are... all right, so the band
breaks up.
The band breaks up. They reunite during 1978 to record Manifesto, but they've reshuffled the cast a little bit. Apparently, Eddie Jobson, as essential as he was to Out of the Blue being such a huge success, reportedly not even contacted for the reunion.
He had other gigs.
Yeah.
He was doing his own band, UK.
Right. Was that Bruford?
I think it's John Wetton is in that.
Right.
I might be wrong. I'm not really so up on my late.
Probably a favorite of Gary Young. Okay, so the sleeve of Manifesto indicated that these guys consisted of Ferry, Manzanera, McKay, and Thompson, along with Paul Carrick, who is the
Later
guy from
Squeeze
Ace.
and Squeeze.
Yeah. And Alan Spenner, Gary Tibbs. Despite everything else mentioning that Roxy had 4 people in it. So anyway, now we're in phase 3. Tucks and Tails, Smooth Prevails. I'm going to call it 79 to 83, even though you could certainly say to present day. So this phase kicks off in February 79. The song Trash was released as a single. Trash 2 was the B-side, giving it an even more perfunctory vibe this time around. I give it 3 stars. It's this is not exactly what you'd be waiting for years to hear, but
You're talking
it's not
about
so
the
bad.
Trash Backed with Trash 2 single.
Mainly, I'm just talking about Trash 2 because Trash is on Manifesto, which
this
I'll
is getting
soon be
confusing.
reviewing.
I gave Trash 2 on its own right 2 stars because I like Trash 1 better.
Yeah, I would be the same.
It sounds like they just did another take of
Yeah.
it, and they like
Yeah.
that was
Much
like the slower
really
one. They
slow.
decided to go with the faster.
It's like a
one.
soft arrangement.
Yeah, but it's also kind of like, it sounds like what's coming up in the next record a little bit more too. Like that slower, fairy kind of version of stuff.
Yeah, so
Anyway.
this era, when they get into Manifesto, they're kind of becoming a little bit different kind of band.
Yeah.
They kind of, I guess we're on to Manifesto now. The main thing that's one of the main things that's kind of a bummer to me about Manifesto is the mix. Like it doesn't, every record they've made up till now has this very in-your-face, punchy, like ass-kicking kind of sound. And this one kind of sounds kind of thin, and it doesn't really leap out of the speakers the same way. It's really noticeable if you play it like back-to-back with, one of their big, like Virginia Plain or something.
Yeah.
The mix is getting a little bit more washy.
Scott, do you like this record?
Well, one of my favorite songs is Manifesto. Of all their songs, I would rate that would be in my top 10.
They're it seems like this is like the first kind of step on the journey to like on the kind of new wave kind of. Well, like even the song Trash, like that's kind of like that song's somewhat cool, but it's like it seems like they're following a trend rather than creating it. It's kind of they're kind of doing like a Steve Naive Farfisa thing.
Yeah.
And it seems like they're kind of like they're not 10 steps ahead anymore.
No, they actually strike me as very far behind. I don't know, to me, there's as much of a step down as like going from Big Star's third to In Space.
I mean, if you look at the videos around that time, it's like they're hard to watch because that Gary Tibbs guy is like dancing around with his bass and
and he's kind of like he's kind of like a kind of a Kmart Jocko. He plays fretless.
Yeah. And it's just like, well, what happened, guys?
Yeah, fretless.
Kmart Jocko is a great title.
Fretless bass is kind of a very unpunk rock instrument by nature. There's a couple things I like on this. I like the song Angel Eyes a little bit. That's kind of more straightforward, but it's kind of like that's kind of a pretty good straight ahead Roxy tune.
This record to me is a 7-10 split.
Yeah.
You got Manifesto kicking things off in grand style. That is a great song. And Spin Me Round, the very last song, is a beautiful little ballad.
That's one of the better songs. That's a playlist worthy song.
But then in between is a fucking Sahara for me.
It is for me too. It's like I really.
They also kind of start using the what's known as the Yamaha CP70 piano a lot on this, which is kind of it's like the Kiss on My Lists piano. It's like very much kind of its time. It's really not my favorite sound, and it's pretty prominent. Like there's that song Stronger Through the Years, which is kind of built on a CP70 thing, and then the Gary Tibbs is kind of farting around on the fretless bass, and it's really long.
What do you think?
That one I strongly dislike. That.
What do you think? What do you think the idea was with side 1 east side, side 2 west side? That was
I never even noticed
kind
that.
of interesting.
I don't know. It doesn't sound like there was a lot of thinking behind it. It's probably the remnants of an evening that was chronicled in the first part of Mother of Pearl.
Yeah, there you go.
I gave Manifesto 2.5.
I give it 1.5.
I give it 3.5 because of Manifesto.
It also goes to show you again how fast things change, because Manifesto is 78 or something?
79.
79?
Yeah.
So it seems like a world has changed since like 75.
I know, right?
It seems like music is so much different in 79 than it is in 75. Like that kind of style of new wave, that's kind of a cool era of new wave, like 79 new wave.
Yeah.
Like it kind of hadn't gotten really into the 80s cheese as much, so it's
Well, we're right at the knack.
although we're getting there now.
Knack.
So
But you still have shoes.
right.
Yeah.
Right, exactly. So next one is kind of in the same vein, Flesh and Blood. There's a few tunes on Flesh and Blood that sound like kind of like building blocks for Avalon, but are nowhere near as they didn't have the sound figured out. That's the thing. Like Avalon is really a triumph of like the sound and the arrangement and the production. And so they're kind of assembling some of the style, but the Avalon is just airtight in the way it's conceived and the way it's like recorded and mixed and the sound curation. And the songs too.
I just gotta say, any album that starts off with a cover of "In the Midnight Hour" is basically saying "fuck you, fuck this, and fuck everything."
Yeah, that is.
Well, Flesh and Blood has some real low.
The weird. That is the dumbest thing ever to put a record on, to put the first song on. I mean, it really. There's so many better songs on that record they could have done. You know. Like, why didn't they just start it with "Oh yeah"?
It's one choice. I mean, it's generally one of the lamest, most unimaginative covers ever.
Kind of. Yeah, I would agree.
Why not just like do "Brown Eyed Girl" like Mustang Sally?
Yeah. "Land of a Thousand Dances." How about that one? That's a real emotional tearjerker.
Now they did start assembling some of the team though, because this like Rhett Davies worked on this record a little bit. He's kind of starting to show up as more of a producer, and then Andy Newmark, who played on Avalon, it plays on a few songs.
But to me, I love that song "Flesh and Blood." It's like I used to do
"Flesh and Blood" is great.
That's the best song.
We did a cover of that in the Spiral Band, and we did a really great cover of our dear departed Matt Harris. He was the bass player. He played such a funky version of that. It was great. And
that's my favorite song on the record. Yeah. That's like I would put that one on the playlist.
I love "Oh Yeah."
"Oh Yeah" it's good. And you know what? I gotta say, 8 Miles High, they do a really good version of that. It's a weird disco version. I don't understand.
I fucking hate that version.
I love it. Have you ever tried to DJ with that song?
It's my least favorite song in their entire catalog.
Midnight Hour's worse.
They're both pretty bad. I mean, just cover versions don't need to look. After Husker Du's version of 8 Miles High, there never needed to be another.
I know, but it's so weird.
This one's Flesh and Blood's a weird kind of grab bag record. It's kind of like the mutt. It's like a weird mutt in their.
It's not my least favorite.
Yeah,
I give it 2 stars.
I also gave this 2. There are times on it where they sound like because just that CP70 piano. It sounds like they're like playing at the Ramada Inn or something. You know, it sounds like they're like a top 40 band or something. Yeah. But then the Same Old Scene is kind of an interesting song. It sounds like they're kind of doing some like MIDI sequencing, like it's almost kind of like Human League or something in that kind of space. Yeah. That's kind of an interesting tune. It's a really kind of synth pop kind of tune. My Only Love, that's another one that sounds like it's something that's kind of a stepping stone to Avalon.
Now that's I think that is you're right about that. Yeah, that one is.
This record seems like it's kind of like it doesn't really succeed, but it's still kind of interesting. I gave it 2.5, but it's weird. It's a weird record.
Yeah. What's your stance?
I always forget My Only Love's on there. It's because it's such a staple of the later Roxy reunions, and I went and saw Ferry 2 years ago, and he played that as well, and it is a really great song. So I would give this record a 3. It's right in between. Okay. There's moments of it that are great, but then there's moments that are, that are just the last 3 songs. I think I can't ever get that far on the record.
Yeah,
I do love the last song, "Running Wild." is a very good song. You like it? I mean, there's 3 songs I like. "Oh Yeah," "Flesh and Blood," and "Running Wild."
"Running Wild's" okay, but then it has one really weird element that totally takes me out of it. It has like a really kind of like bar band, like Hammond B3 kind of thing going on. It just seems so out of place. Like that bummed me out when I heard that. All right, so next we got a couple of B-sides.
July 1980, the "Oh Yeah" B-side, "South Downs." This is my favorite Roxy flip side.
Okay.
It's a synth instrumental by Ferry. Surprisingly effective, seeing as they're not much of a B-sides band, as we've established. This seems pretty close to the kind of smeared, streaked synthscapes that Eno had been fond of creating. So I'm curious if there was a little bit of inspiration that happened there. I give this one 4 stars.
I give this one 3.5. This is the kind of thing that what I call this like synth goop music. You know, I tend to like that kind of thing. I mean, you know, it doesn't really go anywhere. It kind of hangs there. But that's kind of what ambient music does. Sort of. So I gave this. What did I say? I gave this 3.5. It's okay.
I don't know. Again, it's another B-side, another instrumental B-side.
My favorite thing about doing this episode with you is that any of the released albums, you are just a saint with your reviews, and then you hate those B-sides.
I really do.
And so there's another one, Lover, another B-side that's from the same
old scene,
right?
Yeah, it's notable for being one of the few B-sides of theirs with lyrics.
Yeah.
Also featured on the Miami Vice 2 soundtrack album in 1986.
Oh, wow.
Now this one I kind of like. This one kind of has. I will say it overstays its welcome, but there are pretty cool sounds in it. I would have liked it maybe half the length, but you can see why it made it into a movie, like or Miami Vice or whatever. It seems like perfect for that kind of.
It feels to me like a Michael Mann montage soundscape.
Yeah, it just sounds like Miami Vice. It kind of suits it well.
I give it 2.5. I'm not a huge fan.
Yeah, like
I gave this 3.5.
Why is that not on Flesh and Blood and instead of Midnight Hour? You know, like.
Yeah, that was that. I agree. That should have been on there.
Anything. Yeah. I mean, the soundscape of Brian Ferry's colonoscopy. So, February 1981.
We're getting close.
Jealous Guy comes out as a single, not because there's any musical merit to it, in my objective opinion, but because Lennon was unfairly slain in his prime. So, Roxy added a version of the song to their set while touring in Germany, and then they recorded and released it in February 81. You couldn't be faulted for using this song as a way to illustrate the phrase "by rote."
Yeah.
I give it 2 stars.
I gave this 1. This seems kind of more like a solo Ferry thing. This doesn't really have any hallmark of being a Roxy Music song. They did play it in their sets a lot. It was kind of this was kind of part of their live set a lot after this.
Yeah.
Not my thing really. 1 star.
Moving on to May 1982, Avalon is released. Scott, go for it, man.
So this will be my second favorite Roxy Music record. Again, I heard this when it came out, and saw the videos and remember them. But again, at the time, it was like I didn't really. I mean, I liked it a lot, but I didn't really get into it because I was more into like television and Echo and the Bunnymen and Wire and. That kind of stuff.
And a band that you're probably sick to death of talking about in interviews, The Fall.
And The Fall, exactly. So, like a song like, More Than This, it's really, it didn't, but in the back of my mind, I was like, I've always liked it. And then when I went back to it recently, it's just such a perfect record.
It really holds up. It has, it's a very tasteful record. Yeah. There's a lot of kind of touchstones from that 80s period, but it's kind of, it's like when the 80s still sounded good.
Right.
Like records started to sound bad kind of shortly after this. Like this has a real class to it.
And their beats and and they put the B-sides on there. So
yeah.
And it's Phil Manzanera said that by the time you get to Avalon, 90% of it was being written in the studio. Yeah. That album was a product of completely changing our working methods. For the last 3 albums, quite frankly, there were a lot more drugs around as well, which was good and bad. It created a lot of paranoia and a lot of spaced out stuff.
Cool.
So, this album sort of begat a whole genre unto itself. Yeah. Without this album, you wouldn't have probably ABC, Spandau Ballet, certainly Duran Duran.
Yeah. Although some of those things were contemporaneous. Like this came out around the same time as Duran Duran Rio. I think it was like the same month or something.
But then,
right
Was
around
it
the same
really?
time. Yeah, 82.
Huh.
Right around
yeah,
the
but
same
it
time.
just this reeks the 80s, you know.
It
It's-
does.
Yeah, it's really the best sound. It's like the 80s production really at its best. It was mixed by Bob Clearmountain.
Oh, there you go.
Legendary mixer. You know, he mixed like Tattoo You and The River and like Born in the USA, like NXS Kick and Huey Lewis Sports. Like he's a legendary mix engineer, and it's a great sounding mix. I mean, it sounds pristine. It's a very pristine sounding album.
There's not a bad song on this record, and this is, you know, as a music fanatic, and I'm going to guess I can echo the sentiments of both you gentlemen. This is the kind of experience that you hope for, which is that you step into this self-contained sound world that isn't necessarily about the song itself, but about that vibe it creates, that environment.
Yep.
I
Absolutely.
agree. This is also the record when you go into. I remember from the '90s when Pavement would play. Whenever you go into a new room, our sound engineer would always play this.
Yeah, use it to tune the PA.
Like it was everything was a perfect about it to these guys, to where they can get everything locked in. And
Another one that sound guys always use is Money for Nothing.
oh God,
The classic sound guy tuning the PA.
maybe that was Bob Clearmountain too.
It probably was. On this record on Avalon too, so Paul Thompson's not around anymore, but Andy Newmark's kind of the full-time drummer on this one, and I love his playing on this. It's a really kind of understated kind of playing, really cool drum patterns.
He was in the
whole
Family
thing.
Stone during Fresh.
Yeah.
He's
This record, there's no bad songs. I mean, it's awesome, and the funny thing is, this is a notion that struck me when I was listening to it just this time. But this is kind of an adult contemporary spin on Another Green World, in its own weird way. And I'm not even saying that in a pejorative way. It's it's got that sound world vibe to it, where the rules of the sound world are more important than the songs.
I see what you mean by it. Yeah, where it's a kind of world you're going and inhabiting. It has that seamless kind of quality to it. It's very classy sounding. Like I feel like I should be drinking like some like Dom Perignon. It's kind of a different take of glam, right? So this isn't like T-Rex or anything at all, but it's a very glamorous kind of sound to it.
From glam to glamorous.
And the touches are there, you know, like on the spaces in between. It's like there's that like little trumpet. I think it's a trumpet little. Maybe it's just a sax thing, but it sounds like some big band, like Duke Ellington or something like it's really
a lot
cool.
of great like percussion stuff, where, you know, like really like a nice like little like a conga part or something played through like a really nice like lexicon reverb, and like a lot of like little tasty little details throughout.
It's funny, this record doesn't even strike me as Roxy music. It just strikes me as this is Avalon.
Yeah.
And then everything else they did was part of their catalog. This kind of stands on
What's your favorite song on it?
It would have to be More Than This, only because that's the perfectly realized platonic ideal with regard to a top line.
Yeah, great melody. And hook.
What do you think, Scott?
Oh, I'd have to say True to Life.
That's great. That's a great one.
That one has a great sounding mix.
I went down a wormhole once where I found the demos to this, and True to Life's on there, and it's really really interesting how they made it so much better.
Yeah, the final version has the great arrangement, a lot of really cool elements in it. Everything just seems to sit in there just right. Take a Chance with Me is another one where I love the palette on that. It's just a very like grand scale kind of sound. Really great verse chorus melody. Really well written song. The title track, another one like it has a great like aloof kind of quality to it. You know, this record really they got back to making really high art. I feel like on this album, where it kind of like the parts really add up to something kind of like that takes you somewhere.
I agree.
It's almost like if Lifestyles of the Rich and Famous was not a stupid piece of shit, it would be like this.
If this record was a house, it would have a really nice fountain in the front.
Yeah.
I feel like this record maybe kind of fell out of favor a little bit for a while.
Yeah.
But it really holds up as well as anything from that.
And their live shows around then were insanely good. Like they were a really great live band, really great band. I don't know why they had to end it there. I mean, it's a good choice to end it there, but
it's the Seinfeld school. Go out on top.
They're really kind of down to just the three of them. At this point,
yeah, true.
So it's hard to keep something like that together.
I honestly think listening to it like this, it made total sense. They wanted to make this record. They couldn't do it the first time out of the gate. They couldn't do it the second time, but they achieved it at the third time. I think they were going for this sound to begin with. They just didn't make it. They found their own spin of new wave. Like they found their own kind of strain of new wave that wasn't imitating things. It was doing something new. Right.
It took them a minute, but they got there.
Yeah. This one I give 5 stars for sure.
I'm also 5ing this one.
I would say I would do the same.
And then in June '82, the B-side for Avalon is Always Unknowing. It probably should have stayed on the record itself, as it's just as good as everything else on Avalon.
Yeah, in the CD era, this would have certainly been on the album. I think.
Yeah.
I think they probably didn't fit on just because of length.
Oh, they put the instrumental B-sides on the record.
Yeah, I think it's a cool song. I think, like I said before, in the CD era, that would have made the album. I give this one 5 stars because
5 stars
it would have
sure.
It would have made it on the record. I
It
think.
should have been on.
Yeah.
I can't vote. I can't vote because I can't remember it. So
sometimes I do that. Sometimes I say NA. Sometimes I give an NA rating. Dave never NAs anything.
No. I've usually gone back and reviewed way too much.
So that's it.
Well, so now these guys toured extensively until '83. Then Ferry dissolved the band, and then that was it. The guys reformed in 2001 to do the 30th anniversary thing. And
those shows were pretty good. I didn't see them live, but I watched a YouTube of it, and that's pretty good presentation of it. They had a big band; it was like 12 people or something on stage, so they could kind of cover all the parts. And they had someone up there playing the VC3 synth, and they did it pretty accurate. It's pretty cool. And Chris Spedding's in the band too.
And I know Eno never played with them again, right?
No.
He was supposed.
I know that Eno and Ferry. On Ferry's album Frantic, he's on a track called I Thought, which is really good.
Yeah.
But yeah, these guys, they have an interesting arc. So to me, they were this like art damaged, like writhing mound of insanity.
They kind of invented the art damaged thing in rock music. They like took it to a whole. I mean, I guess the Velvets were before them, but they're in that tradition for sure. Of like, it's high art.
Yeah.
Music that's capital A art.
Yeah.
And then, in the interest of, white gloved glamour, all the weirdness was squeezed out of it eventually. Mm-hmm. And that's either a shitty or a terrific thing based on where you what era of the band you like the best.
Yeah, it's kind of a long sustained like excellence, and then a slight dip for a couple of records, and then a return to excellence. So I always like it when these have a happy ending.
Yeah, and I would say so. My top 3 albums are going to be number 3, Avalon, number 2, the first one, Roxy Music, number 1, For Your Pleasure, and then the worst album would have to go to Manifesto.
And I hate when my list is similar to yours. I'm going to go change it. But mine's pretty similar. I had Siren at number 3. I have The Debut at number 2, and For Your Pleasure, number 1. And my least favorite is also Manifesto.
Sometimes that's
Although
how
it's a tough toss-up, though, between Manifesto and Flesh and Blood. I would say those are kind of a similar quality to me. Also, but not terrible records, though. They're not great, but they're not terrible.
How about you, Rabbi?
I would say number 3 would be the first. You know what? I got to say the first 2 records to me are like one record. So I'm going to say those 2 are number 3.
Tie.
Yeah.
Okay.
Number 2 would be Avalon. Number 1 would be Siren. And then the worst would be Manifesto, yes. I agree with that.
That's a good list. It's a striking list. I wouldn't have expected that from you, but also I wouldn't have necessarily expect that you would have picked this band.
We all have the same mix of 4 records in the top, I think.
Yeah.
Cool. Yeah, I mean...
Well, they're an important band. If you're listening and you don't really know who Roxy Music is, hopefully you've been pausing all the way to check out the playlist, which is so perfectly curated that we completely... the idea of a record company actually packaging and releasing this stuff seems completely superfluous.
Well, if you haven't been pausing, you can just go now and start right at the beginning, and you're welcome.
Yeah, you are welcome. And, Scott took time out of his busy day. He's finishing up a record. He's got a huge monolithic tour on the way.
Scott, is there anything specifically you want to plug? Or, obviously we all know about the big upcoming Pavement tour. Was there anything else you want to chat about?
Yeah, just that, I've got this new record that I'm finishing up that hopefully will be out early next year. It's going to be really good. And then I'm going to re-release the 20th anniversary of the first Preston School record. All This Sounds Gas.
Sweet.
Sometime later next year. And
is that going to be packaged with the EP?
Oh, I think so. I think I'm going to package it with the original EP because I have like 1,000 of them left. So that will be the same quality that it was originally put out on. But but I am going to get the other vinyl remastered and then all the Pavement stuff and then I'm going to there's like a lot of fun stuff coming up that I'm excited about and I just want to thank you for letting me talk about Roxy and go back and go back. Kidding. You know, I go through these phases with them where I just, it's like you just listen to it so much and then you just can't listen to it for a while, and then when you get back to it, you're like, yes, I love this band. And
there's always enough stuff in there where it always sounds kind of new. Yeah, because there's so much information in their songs,
Yeah.
Because to me, it was birthed out of the whole psychedelic experience. They will always be a strange band to me, no matter what feints left and right they make. And they'll always be a very, very important band for me. As is, was, and will be Pavement and your work, Scott. Cheers. The confluence of these things couldn't be more important to, I know, Joe and I. So thank you so much for coming on. Follow us on the platform of your choice.
And please also on Twitter. Please follow us on Twitter, Instagram, and Facebook. And subscribe on Spotify or Apple Music or wherever you get your podcasts.
And we have tons of sick shit coming up.
We're here every Monday doing a new artist.
Come hell or high water. See you next week or in a few seconds if you're so bold.
All right, bye.
Take it easy.